What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the second episode of Diamond Discourse presented by Beyond the Monster, your home for all things baseball, hosted by me, Matty Kiwoom. Whether we're breaking down the trades, the most epic games this season, or just debating baseball's hottest topic, I've got you covered here on Diamond Discourse. So, ladies, gentlemen, let's step up to the plate. Let's join the baseball conversation and let's talk about the greatest sport in the world. This, folks, is the second episode of Diamond Discourse. Let's talk ball, baby. Segment number one, I'm going to be predicting some of the best free agents that remain on the market. We're going to start with the amateur from Japan, one of the hottest free agents this offseason, Roki Sasaki. Sasaki brings a pretty strong pedigree despite only being 23 years old. And he's already kind of cultivating a very exclusive club it's not made for everyone. He's letting the Yankees talk to him, the Mets, the Cubs talk to him, the Texas Rangers, the Padres, and the Dodgers. Red Sox are trying to get a meeting. Other teams, I'm sure, are trying to get a meeting to pitch Sasaki why he should go there, because he's leaving at an age where the team's not going to have to pay $300+ million like they did for Yamamoto an off season ago. They're only going to have to pay their international spending pool. So, Shohei Ohtani, when he came out, when he went to the Angels, he only agreed to, I think it was $2.65 million signing bonus. It was only the international slot money. It was not this big lucrative deal. It's caught him some flack, got him maybe a little bit of hot water in Japan, but he's going to have to make his decision based on where he wants to play, not only the money. It's the situation, the team status, the winning tradition, all that stuff is where he's going to make his decision. And that's why I believe that Roki Sasaki will sign with the San Diego Padres for a $5 million signing bonus. So, as of right now, the 25 pools line up like this. I believe there are the Padres in the fourth tier of international signing money, but they are they have the most amongst the contenders. The teams above them have not been rumored or attached to Sasaki at all. The one wild card, if they can be granted a meeting, is the Seattle Mariners. They do have more international pool money than the Padres, but the Padres have as much as the Cubs, the Red Sox, the Yankees, all the teams that were mentioned having meetings or about to have meetings with Sasaki. He's familiar. The Padres have a good system, getting players from the international scene onto this roster. Feels like a good fit. Feels like they're going to be able to make the pitch. And, the Dodgers, although they have Ohtani, they have Yamamoto, which I think a lot of people have kind of connected those dots, but some guys want to pave their own way. He is friends with Yu Darvish. They are on record for working out together, training together, and being actual friends. So having the tutelage of Yu Darvish, having the ability to kind of carve out your own role on your own team and not really be in the shadow of former members of the MPB, I think is going to be very lucrative for Sasaki, and that's why he's going to sign with the San Diego Padres. The next player that I want to bring up, and I'm going to predict where he will sign, is none other than Alex Bregman. Now, in my last video, check it out here on the Beyond the Monster YouTube channel. And actually, while you're here, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to Beyond the Monster? Throw a like on this video. Go check my last video. We got a lot of stuff coming here on the Beyond the Monster YouTube channel. I mentioned how badly I wanted Alex Bregman. Matter of fact, if Craig Breslow gave me the keys to the car, allowed me to be GM for just one day, my move would have been to lock up, to secure, to sign Alex Bregman. There's a lot that goes into this. We're hearing that the Tigers and the Blue Jays are front runners, but the Mets, the Yankees, Astros, not so much. But the Red Sox still very much involved trying to lure Alex Bregman to their team. And why shouldn't they? Bregman still is carrying a ton of moxie, a ton of production. 118 WRC plus last year. He was a 4-WAR player last year. He's still a very, very productive player, and he's going to deserve a bunch of money. That is why my prediction this year, where will he sign? Well, he's going to sign with the Toronto Blue Jays for 7 years, 200, maybe even a little bit more, $200 million. The Blue Jays have been hot on the trail for some free agent talent. They were supposedly in and deep with Soto. They were talking to Burns. They were linked to a number of free agents. So they want to spend money. They have one of the most richest ownership groups in all of baseball. They have the money to spend. And if they don't want to lose Vladimir Guerrero a year from now, if they don't want to have to trade away a Bo Bichette and become kind of a bottom feeder of the AL East, this is a way to keep the train rolling. They can sign him, even though it's a $200 million deal. He will slot in probably in that five hitter range, maybe a little bit higher. But Bregman is a great fit, right-handed bat for Rogers State, for Rogers Center, for the Toronto Blue Jays. And there's some reason why Bregman hasn't signed yet. I think he's waiting for that contract over $200 million, and the Toronto Blue Jays will be the ones to give it to him. That's why he's going to sign north of the border and become the newest member of the Six. The next player I'm going to talk about, he's not just a man, he's a man-bear hybrid. But the reason why he hasn't signed is I don't think his market is as lucrative as he would have thought, considering this is a perennial 35 to 40 home run hitter. But over the last couple of seasons, he's really only averaging about a 2.5 WAR. That's because he doesn't play a whole lot of defense, doesn't run a whole lot. But I'm talking, of course, about the polar bear, Mr. Pete Alonso. We've heard some rumblings that the Angels have been potentially interested. The Giants have been interested. Even the Blue Jays are sniffing around. Like I said, the Blue Jays are hot for a free agent. But I think ultimately where he ends up signing is where he belongs. It's where he's been his whole career. And I think he signs with the New York Mets on a 3-year, $90 million deal. Now, the Mets have made it very clear that they don't really want to extend themselves too much in terms of the years that they dole out. Now, that sounds crazy considering what they just gave Juan Soto, but Juan Soto's 26. Pete Alonso is not as young as Juan Soto. He's already 30 years old. So the 3-year kind of protects the Mets and kind of keeps them happy in how they like to do business. But that $90 million, that $30 million a year AAV, that will kind of smash the previous record for first basemen in terms of AAV, not total value, but AAV. I think that'll make Pete Alonso happy. He kind of leaves his mark as a free agent, kind of gets that confidence boost as having the biggest AAV at first base. He stays in a place where he's comfortable, a place where he's productive. And not to mention, if you've been on the Mets as long as you have, he's been on the Mets now since 2019. The most exciting years are ahead of them. Just bringing in Juan Soto, the new pitching lab, the Steve Cohen being the owner over the last handful of years, like the most exciting years for the Mets are still ahead. Pete Alonso doesn't want to leave that. And I think this is the happy medium where the ownership group, the front office, they're happy not overextend themselves on a player that'll probably have to be at DH in 3 or 4 years. They can go ahead and bring him in, keep him in Queens on a 3-year deal, overpay, short years, long money, big money, makes everyone happy. That's why Pete Alonso is going to stick around and play for the New York Mets. The next player that I'm going to talk about and predict where he will sign this offseason is none other than Anthony Santander, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, the Tigers, the usual suspects, the teams that you keep hearing linked to all these bats are linked to Anthony Santander, and why shouldn't they be? He's coming off his best season as a pro, where he swatted 44 homers and had a 129 WRC+. Plus, he was a 3.3 WAR player, 3 wins above replacement for Santander this year. And truthfully, he's been a quiet producer at the MLB level since he started getting true ABs. Ever since he became a everyday starter, playing over 120 games, getting 500 at bats, we're looking at a player that's a 122, 119, and then again last year the 129 WRC plus. Decent walk rate. He walks about 8% of the time. His strikeout metrics aren't terrible. He's usually around 20%. He's a good professional hitter, switch hitter. He's going to provide a lot of pop for wherever he signs. And I think that this offseason he will decide to play for the Detroit Tigers. He's going to sign a 5-year, $90 million deal. The Tigers, they're coming off their playoff run. This team's starting to take shape. This team is starting to look like a contender in the AL Central and beyond. But they do need some vets. They signed Gleyber Torres for a 1-year deal. I think that was smart. Talked about that in my last video. But bringing in a guy like Santander, it's going to solidify kind of, I think, that professional approach. They're going to bring in a guy that produces, like I said, the 129 WRC plus is well over league average. He's a good player, but he's 30 years old. There's not the long running track record of ultimate, uber production. Like I said, he has the one season over 40 homers, but a couple of years ago in 2022, he did also hit 33. So he does have that 30 plus home run power. He can drive in 100 runs. He can score 80 or 90 more. It's a good fit for the Tigers, who are trying to build a win now contender. In the 5-year deal, you kind of look at it at $90 million. Like, where does that stand over some of the deals that have been signed? Well, the reason why I predict a 5-year 90 is it puts him in the Masataka Yoshida, the Seiya Suzuki range, the Nick Castellanos range. That's kind of that 5-year, anywhere from 85, 90 to $100 million overall. And I think that, the Tigers do have one of the richest, most wealthy owners in baseball, even though they don't really show it. They don't like to spend big. But 5 years keeps them under that, the $100 million mark. 5 years, $90 million. It's a good AAV. It's around $18 million AAV. And this signing here would be good on all sides. I mean, it gives Santander the confidence of having that multi-year deal, that home for the next 5 years. And he plays on a team, I believe, that is on the ascension. It is on the up and up. And he's going to anchor that team. He's really going to be looked towards, maybe not as the best player on the Tigers, but definitely the leader, definitely the guy with the most veteran experience. And adding him with Gleyber Torres starts to build something here. You have Riley Green, you have other young guys that are kind of coming into their own in the Tigers organization. And Santander just further solidifies this professional lineup. And that's why I think they extend themselves, sign him for 5 years, $90 million. They don't get Bregman, but they fall back and they get their guy, Anthony Santander, switch hitter, outfielder, the exact type of player that they need anchoring this lineup. And Santander doesn't hate becoming a 90 millionaire. That's why the teams marry, and Anthony Santander becomes a Detroit Tiger. Well, I want to talk about another pitcher, a pitcher that really came into his own last year, who was uber productive. He signed a 1-year prove-it deal, and I think he went out and did that. He did prove it last season, and he's going to get paid for doing so, and I'm talking about Jack Flaherty. So for my 5th free agent prediction, I'm going to talk about Flaherty. Flaherty's coming off a year where he had a 3.17 ERA, played for the Tigers and the Dodgers, pitched well for the World Series champion, had 194 Ks. And when you look at some of the underlying metric, it does support a pretty good season. xERA of 3.5, which is his best since 2019. He had a 3.10 Sierra, which is a career best for Flaherty. And what I think stood out most and what teams needed to see was he threw over 150 innings. He actually compiled 162 innings last year. That's his best since 2019. He's been, this is a pitcher that has missed some time over the years. So to see him come now, back-to-back seasons, 140 plus innings pitched last year, setting that high since 2019 where he pitched 162 innings. Jack Flaherty's ready to cash in. He's ready to sign that multi-year deal and get paid. Maybe not amongst the top of the league, but certainly become rich and paid for his performance. And I think the team that is going to make the payment is the Baltimore Orioles. They'll sign him for a 4-year, $85 million contract. They missed out on Burns. Burns heads to the Diamondbacks. The Orioles really haven't been linked to a whole lot of players. And when you look at kind of, their projected starting lineup, or I should say their projected pitching rotation, it doesn't look like a team that's going to compete for an AL East title or make a deep playoff run. Yep, sure. They do have Grayson Rodriguez and they have Zach Eflin at the top of their rotation. But after that, Dean Kramer, they brought in Sugano. Trevor Rogers hasn't really been a success for them since signing or since trading for him at the deadline. They could really use a veteran, another pitcher that can come in and produce at a high level. That's going to be Jack Flaherty. They're familiar with the player. Even though the stint wasn't all that sexy when he played for the Orioles a couple years ago, they're familiar with the stuff. They're familiar with the makeup. They're familiar with the player. And I believe that will be the reason that the front office is willing to dole out a multi-year contract for Jack Flaherty. Now, like I mentioned, he's not going to be one of these guys that gets the $200-300 million contract. He is 30 years old. So Jack Flaherty signing for 4 years, $85 million. That's going to put him kind of in that Logan Webb range, kind of in that Lance McCullers of a few years ago. Eduardo Rodriguez, I think, is a good model. When he signed a 4-year, $80 million deal at the age of 30, yeah, he's a little bit better, and he's coming off a better season. That's why I think Jack Flaherty getting going for 4 years, $85 million makes sense on all sides. And the Orioles simply could use another pitcher that they can slot at the top of the rotation. So Flaherty heads back to Baltimore on a 4-year, $85 million contract. The next player that I'm going to talk about may end up being maybe the biggest steal of the free agent class. I'm talking about Jurick Profar. Profar is coming off a fantastic season for the San Diego Padres, where he hit 24 home runs, drove in 85, scored 94 more, did steal 10 bags, had a 139 WRC plus and a 4.3 wins above replacement last year. He was very good for the Padres. Now, the market for him hasn't been all that hot as of yet. The Bregmans have to sign. The Santanders have to sign. These players have to sign first, I think, before the Profar market really takes off. But having said that, 31 years old, he's still got a few years left in the tank. And if he's going to give you anywhere from a 110 or 130 type of WRC plus production, he is going to be a run creator at a pretty high level. Now, there really hasn't been a ton of rumors as to where he can go, just a lot of speculation based on who misses on Santander, who misses out on Alex Bregman. He's a switch hitter that has been around for a long time. Now, if you're old like me, you remember Profar's days in the Little League World Series, but he has been in the big league since 2012. And I think this offseason he really cashes in, and I try to whittle it down. Where do I think he'll go? I think it's going to be one of the teams that are savvy with their free agent signings, a team that wants to win now but doesn't want to overspend on some of the other players in the market. And for me, that team was the Houston Astros, and I think they signed Profar to a 3-year, $58 million deal. Profar isn't going to replace Kyle Tucker. No way, no how. But now they have Predes at the hot corner. They have Christian Walker at first base. You bring in a guy like Jurick Profar who can bat from both sides of the plate, play every single day. He's played over 150 games 2 of his last 3 seasons in San Diego. Profar is a sneaky good fit for the Astros, and he is one of those guys that's going to sign. People go, oh, that's kind of cool. That's a smart play. Us fantasy gamers are going to be excited that he's on the Astros. He's in that lineup. And then we're going to be talking about him in June and be like, why wasn't more teams in on Profar? He's killing it in this lineup. And it'll be the atmosphere. It'll be the lineup. He won't have a whole lot of pressure on him in Houston. Of course, he's not their best hitter, but he'll be surrounded by guys like Altuve, Christian Walker, Yordan Alvarez, amongst others. This is a great fit for Profar in this retooled Houston Astros lineup. In the 3-year, $58 million contract, they're not really overextending themselves. They signed a similar deal in Christian Walker. They've shipped out Kyle Tucker, who is the best player of all that I've just mentioned, maybe than Yordan, but still, he's going to get paid $400-500 million next offseason. They don't want to have to deal with that problem. They bring in a guy like Profar. Now you have 2 affordable contracts that are just over 3 years. They'll be off the books at the same time, and yet the Astros winning window, which of course is still open, that pleases that end of things as well. They're not looking to rebuild; they're looking to retool. In signing Jurick Profar to a 3-year, $58 million contract is the exact type of move that a team that is as savvy as the Houston Astros will pull off. That's why I think Jurick Profar heading to the Astros is a perfect match. The next player I want to talk about and predict where he will sign is the only reliever that I'm going to talk about today, and that man is none other than Mr. Tanner Scott, the flame-throwing lefty that looks to sign a big contract. Now, the rumors are he's looking for 4 years and $80 million, $20 million per. I don't see him quite getting that, but he's not far off. He's been ultra productive over the last 2 seasons for the Miami Marlins and then the San Diego Padres, especially coming off of last year with a 1.75 ERA. He leaves a lot of runners on base, which is exactly what you want from a reliever, right? You don't want those guys that he inherits to score, but about a 30 or 29% K rate, 16.3 K minus walk rate. He gets hit. His hard hit rate. Sorry, I just completely stuttered over all that. But his hard hit rate is under 30%, which is a nice indicator for relievers. And he does limit barrels. He avoids the fat part of the bat. I would say, as a bit of a analytics kind of overview, the Sierra and XFIB aren't as pristine as you'd like, but the production's there, the stuff is there, the makeup's there. Coming off a season where he had the most saves of his career, 22. He's had over 20 saves 2 of his last 3 seasons. He's primed to get paid, and he should do it. And I think the team that will pay Tanner Scott is the Atlanta Braves, and they'll give him a 4-year, $70 million contract. Pretty good deal. They need a left-handed reliever. They've been relying on AJ Minter for years. He's getting a bit older. I think they turn the page to a guy like Tanner Scott. He's going to be not their closer, but he's going to be their high-leverage lefty. Gives them a nasty bullpen of Scott, then to Raisel Iglesias. Let's face it, he's not going to get the big contract that the Josh Haders and Edwin Diaz received. I mean, 5 years, 95 for Hader, 5 years, 102 for Edwin Diaz. They got these contracts because they are year in and year out amongst the league leader in saves. They did it for years before hitting the market. Scott's been good, but Scott hasn't been that good. But a 4-year, $70 million investment's pretty hefty for a lefty reliever. But he's worth it because, like I said, he has the closer ability. So if something happens to Iglesias or if they want to move off from Iglesias in the near future, they'll have someone ready to rock in Tanner Scott. And he's coming off a year where his fastball velocity sat at 97.2. That's the hardest he has thrown consistently, dating back to his Baltimore days in 2018. So Tanner Scott deserves to get paid, will get paid, and Atlanta could use him as they regroup and want to make a deep playoff run in 2025. So Tanner Scott, 4 years, $70 million to the Atlanta Braves makes a whole lot of sense. And Tanner Scott will be really dangerous there for that Braves, and that give them a very strong bullpen. The 8th and final prediction on today's video is going to be Hyun Kim, my guy from the Kiwoom Heroes, man. Kiwoom Heroes, maybe that's where I got the nickname. Check it out. I don't know. It is. It definitely is. But Hyun Kim decided to leave the San Diego Padres, did not take the option. He wanted to hit the open market. Hyun Kim's a sneaky good player since he really kind of got into the swing of things. So his rookie year in 2021 was less than ideal. But since then, I mean, he's played in 150 games, 2 of his last 3 seasons. He's been above average in WRC plus, but only slightly. He hasn't really been a tremendous run creator over his career, but he's been a very valuable player. This is a guy, since he kind of took that next step and got comfortable in the MLB, 3.6, 4.2, and a 2.6 wins above replacement over these 3 years in San Diego. Good defender, can play multiple positions in the infield. He can play second, he can play short, he can play third. And the approach is a big league approach. I mean, he doesn't strike out. He hasn't been overwhelmed by MLB pitching. He's been under 20% K rate each of the last 3 seasons. He's had a 12 or better walk rate 2 of his last 3 seasons. And as a matter of fact, it's been the last 2. He's getting comfortable in a big league uniform. And he's been effective on the base paths. He has a 38 stolen bag season. And last year he swiped 22 in only 121 games. He's going to provide value for a team, and there is a little bit room left in the tank in terms of his evolution. He's under 30 years old. He hasn't hit that yet. He's going to be 29 this season. And if you notice at the top of the show, you didn't see me predict this team signing Alex Bregman, and I think that team that I want to sign Alex Bregman will pivot, and that is why Hyun Kim will sign with the Boston Red Sox on a 4-year, $65 million contract. The rumors out there is he's looking for 75. Like I mentioned, I don't think he's as good of a run creator, as good at the plate to garnish, 70, 75 million, but 65 over 4. I think that is the right ballpark. And if the Red Sox, you look at this ownership, you look at how they're trying to do things, they're trying to be a little bit more sneaky. They're not trying to overpay. 4 years, $65 million is not an overpay for a guy like Kim, a guy they can play second base. He can be their everyday second baseman and give them plus defense. If Trevor Story When Trevor Story hits the IL, he can slide over to shortstop and give them above average shortstop play. And if they ultimately decide to move Rafael Devers across the diamond or DH him, he'll be a good third baseman. The position flexibility and versatility of a Kim provides Red Sox with that little added bonus, a little added value. Obviously, Bregman does that at a high level as well, but he's going to cost $200 million. $65 million, is a cheaper alternative. And as we've seen over the last handful of years, the Boston Red Sox apparently loves the dollar store version of players. And that's not the only reason why Kim, I think, is a good fit for Boston. Let's look at his spray chart. Look at this bad boy. See all this right here? Monster territory, green monster territory. Look at those home runs right there. Look at that. Look at that pull tendency. That'll play well at Fenway Park. So I think the Red Sox, they go ahead and sign Hyun Kim on a 4-year, $65 million deal, and I'll be very excited because you can't really see it's a little blurry, but this right here is a Hyun Kim auto rookie. So I would love to see him in Boston pinstripes. I've been a fan of Kim since his Kiwoom hero days. COVID was crazy for a lot of people. It allowed me to become a fan of the KBO. I've been following the KBO ever since. So I'd like to see Hyun Kim in a Boston Red Sox uniform. They've been interested in him. You've heard him linked when he was coming over from the KBO. They ultimately did not win the sweepstakes to bring him in. And then last year at the trade deadline, they were supposedly all over Hyun Kim. The price was just a little too high. Now they only have to give up some money. 4 years, $65 million is the right spot to bring in a player of this talent, of this versatility, of this flexibility. I like Hyun Kim in a Red Sox uniform. I'll be very excited when it happens. So let's put it into the air, people. Let's put it into the air. Let's put it in the universe. Hyun Kim, Red Sox, 4 years, $65 million. It's my little Dr. Evil impression. And that's it. Those are my 8 predictions for this year's free agency class. Some of the best remaining free agents in my predictions. Stick around. We got more left of the show. The next segment number 2 on Diamond Discourse, is going to be a little name that player. So I got 3 different stages: the sicko stage, the you're good stage, and it's kind of a layup stage. I'm going to give these 3 and give some stats, give some information about this player, and you have to guess this player. So whether you're watching on YouTube or checking us out on the Beyond the Monster Diamond Discourse podcast channel, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff, you can follow along. Pause it if you need to, if you want to take a guess. But are you a baseball sicko? Are you good at naming these players? Or are you a baseball beginner? Are you a novice here? We'll find that out here as I relay these 3 sets of info, analytics, statistics, whatever you want to call it. So the sicko stage is the analytics side of things. So this player had a 12.3% barrel rate last year, a 53.3% hard hit rate. Both of those metrics were career highs for this player. He had a 151 WRC plus. 151 WAR would have been otherworldly, so that's not what he had. He had a 151 WRC plus and a 6.3 wins above replacement. So this guy had a fantastic 2024 season. So baseball sickos, can you name this player? I'll give you a second as I ramble on to see if you're a sicko or if you're just a baseball. Are you a true baseball savant, or are you just a baseball watcher, follower? Or are you just getting in the game? We're going to find that out now. So let's get to the next stage of clues. Some of the production stats, or what we call in fantasy baseball, the surface stats. He had a 292 average, 36 home runs, 188 runs plus RBIs, and a 372 OBP. So he got on base at almost a 37% clip. He scored a lot of runs, drove in a lot of runs, swatted a ton of home runs, 36 career high for this player, and batted nearly 300. So who is this player? Who is this potential, top of the league producer? I mean, these numbers they're so good. Who is it? Who is it? Can you guess? Name that player. And the last set of information that I'll go ahead and give, the clues that I'll extend to you guys, is this. Some of his personal info. He's a second baseman. He's 31 years old. He's a switch hitter, and he has only played on 2 teams throughout his career. Can you name this player? And I'll give you one more hint. The 2 teams that he played on, they're on the western side of the United States. Can you name this player? I'll give you 3. I'll give you 2. I'll give you 1. Hopefully you were able to pick out that this is Ketel Marte. And Ketel Marte, folks, had a unbelievable 2024 campaign, MVP-esque type season. And of course, he never really warranted that type of hype because Shohei Ohtani plays in the NL, so he was never really a true contender in that sense. But when you look at the numbers, almost 300, he had a WOBA almost 400. I mean, he was awesome last year. He was awesome. And his ability to score runs, drive in runs, hit home runs, the stolen bases weren't high, only 7, but I mean, he was a massive, massive, massive value for the Diamondbacks. He was a great player for them last year, and I expect a lot of the same. It seems as if he's kind of taken this next step in his career. When you look at a lot of the underlying metrics, like I mentioned, the barrel rate, career high, hard hit rate, career high. And then, a lot of his X stats, his XBA, X slugging, X WOBA, all of those are either right around his actual surface stat or even better, which goes on to prove that, there's a lot of luck in baseball when you're up over 600 at ABs. Sometimes it kind of bounces your way, sometimes it doesn't. When you look at his BABIP, 299, that's right around right around his career average. This is not a season where he just got a lot of good luck. He's actually projected this year to have a higher BABIP. So a lot of the balls that he puts in place, we're expecting more hits out of it this year. But if he's going to hit the ball, and barrel it up 12% of the time, hit the ball hard over 50% of the time, exit velo highest it has been since 2015 at 117, 94 exit velocity on a consistent basis, man. Ketel Marte was great in 2024, and for all you fantasy players, be excited for him in 2025. I think he's going to be worth the ADP. He's going to be worth the selection, especially in points leagues where you're not worried about stolen bases as much. I'll go on a rant about fantasy and my thoughts on that and how to make it better at some point, but that's not the meaning of this segment. This is Name That Player. Are you a sicko? Are you a fan? Or are you a baseball casual? Where did you guess Ketel Marte? Even if you did, make sure you leave in the comments. Are you a sicko? Are you a fan? Or whatnot. So I want to know, did you guess it? And when did you guess it? Because Ketel Marte was this week's Name That Player. All right, today we're going to wrap things up with the last segment of today's episode. It's going to be a nice little game of GM for a day. I did the Boston Red Sox last time. This time I will be the GM for one day of the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, looking at this roster, looking at this organization, I would say rebuilding is the ultimate goal. We're not looking to win right away this year. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? There's a number of players on this roster, I think, that could be sold at a good clip, that are valuable. Now, the 3 that come to mind, Nolan Arenado, Ryan Helsley, and then the player I'll talk about. But the reason why I'm not going to sell Nolan Arenado in my one day as GM is I think it's going to be a little bit too complicated. Trading away Arenado is going to be so tough due to his age, his contract, and we've seen a decline in both his surface stats and his underlying metrics in a way that I think I'd have to get creative to unload that contract. I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as give me a B-level, A- level prospect for a guy who's been a perennial producer. I think teams are pervy and hip to the decline in defense and offense, and due to his age and his contract, it's not going to be easy to get a deal done. So if I'm only GM for a day, I'm not looking to inundate myself with deals that I don't think I can get done, or at least get close to getting done in my one day. Now, Ryan Halsey is also on the table to sell. He's a 30-year-old closer. He throws gas. He's been amongst some of the highest producers in terms of saves in closing ability. But the reason why I'm not selling him now is the market for closers doesn't always get hot at this time of year, where the market for relief pitchers and closers especially, it gets hot at the deadline. So since I'm only GM for a day, I'm not going to go ahead and trade away a piece now when, the front office can get a hell of a lot more in July. And when you look at Halsey's underlying metrics, when you look at his velo, when you look at his production last year, I think it's safe to say he should pick up where he left off. I mean, injuries are injuries and you can't predict them. But I don't know if it would be smart for me as GM of the Cardinals for just one day to sell a piece. Yeah, would it be probably the easiest piece to sell in my one day? Relief pitcher. Yeah, maybe I could use Helsley to sell an Arenado. Sure, these are all options, but that's not where I want to go, my GM for a day. Where I want to go, and my ultimate goal for my day as GM of the St. Louis Cardinals will be to trade away Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray is 35 years old, and you might be saying to yourself, how are you going to sell a 35-year-old starter when you have one day as general manager? Well, I would argue that after his production in 2024, this contract's a bit of it's not that bad. It's 2 years left on the deal. It's $30 million on average over these 2 years, so $25 million in 2025. And then $35 million in 2026. And if I, as the Cardinals GM, get approval from ownership to take on some money, because at the end of the day, the Cardinals they're right middle of the league or so in terms of where they are at in terms of their overall payroll. So they could sustain a little bit of that Gray contract to facilitate it and to make get a better prospect, which is, as GM, I'd be more than thrilled with ownership with them doing. But even so, I think $30 million over 2 years for a guy like Sonny Gray is not totally off market. It's not head and shoulders above market in terms of the age because the production was there in spades last year. The 3.8 ERA, it's good, not as good as you think, but when you look at the underlying metric, we had a 3.12 FIP, a 2.82 xFIP. His Sierra last year was 3.03, which is his best since ever. His 3.03 Sierra is the best he's ever had. The dominance was there. 30% K rate, 24% K minus walk rate. He took the ball a bunch last year. He pitched over 160 innings. That's back-to-back seasons over above that threshold. And last year, he looked so effective, so dominant for the Cardinals, and you wouldn't even know it because the Cardinals sucked last year. They didn't really make a whole lot of news. So Sonny Gray's the perfect pitcher to unload. And this Cardinals team, it's just riddled with mediocrity throughout the lineup, throughout the pitching rotation. But they are a couple trades away from building towards something special. Because, seeing Mason Wynn in the lineup last year take that step. Jordan Walker, we hope, rebounds. Victor Scott is under 24 years old. And then, of course, they have Gorman, Thomas, Segis. Is it Segis? I'm not exactly sure how to say his name. And then the reason why I want to trade Gray is I believe the pitching market, it's hot right now. Teams are going to be looking at starting pitching, especially if they ultimately whiff on the secondary options because the primary options are gone. But if they miss on Sasaki, they miss on Flaherty, all of a sudden Sonny Gray becomes a very lucrative option to add to your rotation. And in terms of the Cardinals themselves, Quinn Matthews, top 100 prospect pitcher. Tink Hence, top 100 pitcher or top 100 prospect pitcher. There is pitching waiting to break out. And I think, given their age and given where they're at in their development, the winning window for the Cardinals starts not this year, maybe next year, definitely the year after that. And now's a great time to move on from Sonny Gray. A team has 2 years of control. A team can bring him in to be their, day one, day two starter. And then you look at who could I sell him to, right? He's coming off a great year, 35. He's still got enough in the tank. 166 innings last year, still got enough in the tank. So who am I selling him to? Of course, the Mets. Let me start with the Mets. Hey, Steve, you don't care about money. Hey, it's Mr. Cohen. How you doing? First of all, can you help me with my investments? You can't? Okay, that's some sort of breaking the law, but I'll call you tomorrow when I'm not the GM of the Cardinals. You looking to trade for Gray? You can afford him. I think it'd be tough for the Mets. They have a pretty good rotation. They've already brought in 3 new arms, or re-signed one, brought in 2 arms. I don't know if they're going to be the team I want to trade with, so I'm going to call the Braves. Hey, Braves, Mets are interested. You interested? They could, they could be the team looking to bring him in. But ultimately, no, it's not going to be the spot. They got Strider coming back this year. Sale looked great last year. And they just have a plethora of arms that they're hoping they could throw at the wall and put together a decent rotation. So it's not the Braves. So I'm going to call the Reds. Say, hey, Reds, you're looking to compete this year. You got Terry Francona. You want to win. Sonny Gray, you're familiar with this player. Well, we're divisional rivals. And when you look at their rotation's ready to go for 2025. I don't know if they're really going to overpay much. I don't really know if this is the fit. So we don't make a deal. But the team I make a deal with is in the AL. I'm going to turn my sights to the AL. After striking out with the NL, let me turn my sights to the AL. And I'm going to call up the Detroit Tigers. I'm going to say Detroit. You made the playoffs last year. You pieced it all together with all these relievers that were starters, now relievers, and you pieced it together. You made it work, but you need some veteran presence in this rotation. You need some stability in this rotation. And I know you're okay with a little bit of money. You signed Gleyber Torres, and if my prediction earlier in the show is correct, you also signed Anthony Santander. So you're not totally afraid. You're not totally shying away from spending a little cash. Why don't you go ahead and spend it on a pitcher? Because I'm looking at a projected rotation that has Tariq Skubal and then a whole lot of who knows. Of course, Jackson Jobe, we're hoping he takes that step, but he's still very young, very green. They brought in Alex Cobb, great signing, but he's not. He gets hurt every year. He's 37 years old. He's a bottom of your rotation type guy. Reese Olson, we hope he can bounce back from a shoulder injury, but again, not all that proven at the big league level. And Casey Mize, well, I know he's the 101, but he's going into his 28-year-old season, and he really hasn't been that type of difference maker. You need a 24% K- walk rate guy, a 166 innings pitched guy, a low 3 Sierra guy. You need Sonny Gray, and they're going to say, yes, we do. What do you want? And I looked at their prospects. Of course, I'm going to start asking for Jace Young, but Jace Young's already a big league contributor. He's projected to be their starting third baseman. Maybe he becomes a bench role if they sign Santander, but that's shooting a little too high. The player that I'm actually going to focus on, the player that I'm going to try to bring in as the St. Louis Cardinals GM for a day, is Hyun Lee, 21-year-old in the system, made his way up the ranks into AA last year. And the reason why I'm going after him is he's young. He's 21, so if my winning window is in 2 years, he's still going to be kind of ascending at that point. There's not a whole lot of depth in their minor league system, at least at the top end for the Cardinals in the infield, mainly because a lot of them have kind of started breaking through to the big league level, but none of them has really broke through in a major way, becoming like a definite cog of their next winning window. Hyun Lee, he's got a little bit of size to him. He's a little bulky kid, and he's got a little pop. And the reason why I think the Tigers would be willing to send me this prospect is because they just got him in 2023. They sent away Michael Lorenzen for him. So if you could turn Michael Lorenzen into Sonny Gray, I think that makes a whole lot of sense for the Tigers. It makes a whole lot of sense for the Cardinals. Lee batted .298 last year with 12 dingers in AA. He did injure his calf and miss some time, so maybe that's another reason why this makes a whole lot of sense. He's a top 10 prospect for the Tigers, but he has a little bit of red flags. And, the injury, the calf, can he stay healthy? He's also fresh into the system. It's not a homegrown guy. This isn't someone that they've been, developing for years. They've only had him in the system for just over a calendar year. That's why I think this is a good match for the Cardinals and for the Tigers. So if I'm GM for just one day, I am going to take Sonny Gray, shop him around, and ultimately call the Tigers and try to get Lee and offload $60 million, offload my ace, but give him to a team that definitely could use him, and I'm going to continue to build my farm system. So that's what I would do as GM for just one day of the St. Louis Cardinals. So that's it. That's the episode. Please follow me on X. I'm at Matty Kiwoom. Follow Beyond the Monster on X. Follow us on the Substack Beyond the Monster, and then, of course, the YouTube channel at Beyond the Monster. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, find some of the podcasts wherever you're finding your podcast on Spotify, Apple. You can get it in the Diamond Discourse channel or off the Beyond the Monster. So that's going to be it. That's going to be the episode. Come back for the next one. Keep the discourse going, and I'll see you next time. Peace.